presentation, discussion, update, and review of a proposed development for the Embers Grill, formerly identified as the Red Creek Dance Hall and Restaurant, and the surrounding property located between the Creek Turnpike and Tucson Street, and so forth, and consideration and discussion of a proposed resolution objecting to gaming at this location and authorizing the city manager to take all appropriate action. And I believe that's Beth Anne again.
Yes, sir. At the July 3rd meeting, I provided an update to the council on this particular development. And I spent quite a bit of time at that meeting going over developments that had occurred to date. And so I thought what I would do, rather than revisiting all of those things, is I would provide an update consistent with what's happened since that time. One of the things that has occurred is the city manager and the mayor and I were scheduled to meet with the principal chief and the attorney general of the Muskogee Nation. The meeting was scheduled for July 14th. That morning, I was advised that the principal chief of the Creek Nation had a conflict and the meeting would need to be rescheduled. I had followed up with the attorney for the Creek Nation Gaming Commission several times to try to reschedule this, and was advised, I believe this morning, that they would like for me to work with the Attorney General for the Creek Nation to get this scheduled. So I've called him twice today, left messages both times. I have not yet heard back from him, but in fairness, it's only been today. And so I look forward to getting with him, scheduling a meeting, and then we can move forward with this. Also, on July the 14th, I sent you a letter that was sent to Mr. Eric Nelson, who was the attorney for Mr. Bruner. Now, Mr. Nelson, his involvement, as he advised me on this day, because I did call him in advance and let him know that I was going to be sending him a letter, he told me that he was primarily involved in terms of setting up LLCs, and he attended some of the preliminary meetings with staff members, and indicated that he really was not involved in any potential gaming. But apparently he provided the letter to his client, Mr. Bruner, and yesterday I received a phone call from a gentleman by the name of Dennis Whittlesey, who is an attorney in Washington, D.C. And Mr. Whittlesey actually had represented Ms. Giles and Ms. Capps, and I believe also Tiger Habia, who I think was the chief of the Kailiji tribe, and also the developers the last go round. And so he indicated to me that he was representing the developers in this particular case, and he wanted to let me know that he had received a copy of the letter that I had forwarded to Mr. Nelson involving this issue. He told me that they had retained a historian and that it was their position that the Kailiji tribal town and the Muskogee Creek Nation had concurrent jurisdiction over this particular tract. So I've talked to Sovereignty Council quite a few times over the last few days, and he immediately contacted the state of Oklahoma's Attorney General and advised them, or the individual, Tom Gruber, that we had been working with, advised them of what was transpiring. And that it did appear that they were going to move forward with gaming. He confirmed that there has been an application filed on behalf of the Kailijis with the National Indian Gaming Commission. So that brings us to today. So what happened today was, in addition to me calling the Attorney General for the Muskogee Creek Nation, I received a phone call from the mayor who advised that Mr. Lucian Tiger III, who was the speaker for the Muskogee Creek Nation Tribal Council, had requested to come to the meeting tonight, which of course he could do, and had requested the ability to maybe move things around on the agenda so that this could be addressed before. And Mr. Tiger actually was here back in October and was monitoring the situation. So I invited them to come early because it was going to be him and several representatives of the Creek Nation to come early and meet with me and the city manager, and so that we could just have a dialogue about this. He was agreeable to doing that, but then a short time later, I received a follow-up phone call from him, and he said that the Attorney General had requested that he not come to the meeting and not meet with us, and so, but that the Attorney General was expecting my call and was going to get with me, and we were going to set up a meeting. So I don't know what any of that means. All I know is I've spent a lot of time on the phone today trying to meet with somebody from the Creek Nation, and so I will endeavor to continue that. And I appreciated Mr. Tiger's call. I appreciated the willingness of the tribal officials to continue to visit with this, because as far as we're concerned, from a legal perspective, Creek Nation has jurisdiction over this particular parcel. I mean, the city of Broken Arrow has no jurisdiction as far as I'm aware. And so, in any event, we would like to work cooperatively in a supportive capacity, because clearly we don't have jurisdiction over it. But one thing that we did do is we drafted a resolution, and this was attached for the council's review. And as I have advanced through this process and visited with, or not visited with, a number of people on the phone, I felt like there might be some opportunities for the council for me to refine this prior to full consideration at the next meeting. And some of the things that I had discussed with my legal staff and also Sovereignty Council was just a blanket objection to gaming within the city of Broken Arrow, which I believe the council has indicated in open meetings. There is a distinguishing factor here, because you as a council, you can object to gaming, although you don't have any jurisdiction to regulate it. But you can't take action, at least in my mind, in terms of a request for injunctive relief unless the gaming is illegal. And if it is an entity that hasn't received approval from the Creek Nation or from the National Indian Gaming Commission, then the gaming would be illegal. And that would enable you, at least in my mind, to move forward with a request for some type of injunctive relief. Formally requesting that the State Attorney General initiate an investigation and take formal action as required. Formally asking the Muskogee Creek Nation to address any illegal gaming, because it is a creek allotment. Formally directing Mr. Begg, who is the City Sovereignty Council, to draft a letter to the National Indian Gaming Commission objecting to issuance of a permit for gaming on this site. And then authorizing the city manager to take all other actions he deems necessary, including drafting a letter to the proposed developers. But, injunctive relief is an extraordinary remedy, and that's not my words, that's the court's words. They say it's an extraordinary remedy, and in order for the council to move forward with taking that sort of action, it would be very important to be able to demonstrate that illegal gaming was actually going on. So ideally, you would have the ability to conduct a preemptive strike of illegal gaming, but at the end of the day, in order to meet the standard as set by the court, you're probably going to have evidence that illegal gaming is actually going on. So I apologize for that long update. I will be happy to in fact, would welcome your comments on this. And also, I think there are a few people that have signed up to speak as well.
So, notwithstanding the current status that nothing's happening there, as it sits today, just as a restaurant, we still don't have the authority to go on the property. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So, from if the building should catch on fire, we do not have permission to send our fire department on, nor would we send our fire department on site.
Well, it's kind of interesting, because a few years ago we had a situation where there was a fire on, and the fire chief can correct me, there was a fire on an allotment, and we did respond. I don't recall if we actually went on the property. It wouldn't surprise me if we did, because if we don't go in there, the chief is nodding, yes, we did. The problem is, if we don't respond and go, it really puts our citizens at risk. And so, no, we don't have permission, but as a practical matter, if there's a medical emergency or something else, we're probably going to go. But
We won't send our firefighters inside the building.
that is something that the chief and I need to talk about, because I think it puts our firefighters at risk, because we have not had the opportunity to conduct an inspection to ensure compliance with the various safety codes. But it's something that the city manager will have to work on from a staff perspective. But
Same regarding police enforcement as well.
police
Would-
enforcement, unless,
Would that be something, and maybe not perhaps a resolution, but something that before we would move forward with anything, that would require significant dialogue as far as what it would cost us as a city to have standby fire personnel or police personnel for anything that occurred on that property?
yes, and police, they'd have to be cross-deputized. So in order for them to have enforcement, and,
We had
you know,
indicated we want to have those conversations.
but yeah.
Regardless of what's on the property?
Yes. We
Even a
made that,
restaurant?
we made that clear to the developer, I should say the owner, in the meeting that Beth Ann and the mayor and I were at earlier this year.
Again, even a restaurant?
Yes.
Okay.
Because that's when they talked about what the plans were for the property, and we told them that
Because unlike properties outside our city limits that may pay into jurisdiction property taxes, that pays nothing into anybody's tax base. So I think it would behoove us to make sure that there's adequate compensation for us, because the extra personnel that it will require us to have, not only in police but fire, on a standby basis for anything that occurred there.
Well, we made that clear because when they showed us what their long-term plan was, is to put residential there along with retail and commercial. We made it very clear that, you're going to need our services, and we want to sit down and discuss those, and that also included basically what do we need to do to be able to provide public safety services as well.
Anything at this point? Okay. We have had one person sign up to speak on this matter, John Lanning. And, sir, as I mentioned before, if you give your name and your address and 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is John Lanning. I live at 317 West Raleigh Place in wonderful Broken Arrow. I appreciate you guys coming forward with this resolution. I like seeing the action behind the words. It's important that you understand you have our support as voters. I know a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people. I see a lot of things on social media. People are not happy about this underhanded attempt by these people. I am disappointed to see the mayor's not here, nor the councilor Parks is not here, though I passed him a few minutes ago before this meeting started in the hallway. That says a lot to me as a voter, maybe where their values are. So that's disappointing, but thank you all for doing this. I hope you guys do push forth on this resolution, and thank you so much.
Just understand, the mayor's at a conference.
Okay.
And Councilman Parks spends this time every year in Washington, D.C. So it's just something that they do every year. Just happens to be the draw of the night that we were discussing this. They'll be here in 2 weeks when we discuss it.
Sure. Okay, well, I really thought I saw them walk by me, so
No.
No.
that's fine if it's somebody else.
Both out
but,
of
you know,
state.
Out of state.
That's fair.
Yes.
But, this is an important thing, and so we would like to see the leadership, so.
Well, and that is one of the reasons why we are discussing the item tonight and voting on August 1st, to give them an opportunity to participate and vote on this as well, because we felt it was important that this be addressed by a full council.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to let the council know that Beth and I have talked about this multiple times, or almost every single day, multiple times, I should say. And I certainly like what she put together in the email talking about the 5 points. And so I would recommend that we finalize a draft and have it ready for your consideration at the August 1st meeting. And I do know if the other two council member, the mayor and the council member were here, they would be in agreement with that because I've spoken to both of them about it.
I agree. I agree.
So we would essentially have about 3 or 4 more now therefores.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any further
Thank you.
questions on that?